Good. Okay. Yay. I am so excited to be doing this officially. Robyn, welcome. You are the inaugural Empower Hour for 30 minutes. An opportunity for inspiring women to come and share their expertise and their insights so that we can all have happier, healthier lives and relationships. I'm super excited that you're here today for a lot of reasons. And let me introduce you officially because I love knowing about you. So for those of us who are joining here in the live, hi, welcome. Super excited. This is going to be so fun. I love this new practice and this new feature that we're doing here in our group. And what better way to start than with somebody who specializes in relationships and making them better. So Robyn Smith, I like that you spell your name with a Y, I'm going to read it because I want to get it right, is an award-winning speaker, a leading trauma and relationship coach for women, and founder of the Rock Your Relationship movement. Inspired by her own thriving 22-year relationship, congratulations, with her husband, she's helping thousands of women and couples transform from frustrated to fulfilled by creating deeper, loving, and conscious connections for greater life satisfaction and happiness. She helps her clients, and she's going to help us today, help unwind layers of complex trauma and dysfunctional patterns. Or maybe she'll teach us a little bit about how to do that.
Yeah, we're not going to do all that
time,
now.
right? It's like this, yeah. And I was going to wait because I wanted to ask you about that too, that have interfered with their ability to enjoy ease and harmony in their relationships. Because we know what that's about in here, don't we? Like you talk in our language in here, Robyn. So women can enjoy ease and harmony in relationships with others and themselves so they can feel connected, happy, and whole. So welcome, Robyn. I feel like you are expanding the bubble here. Really
Thanks so much for having me. I'm honored to be your inaugural.
Hey.
Yeah.
So I love that you're here, and I am completely interested that you are a relationship coach and that you specialize in communication.
Mm-hmm.
Could you say something about why?
Well, I got to say that when I ask in my group, I have a Facebook group too, what's your top frustration or concern in your relationships? Communication is number one. So, so that's why I love to share about this, because I know it's top of mind for people, and women especially, men too, I think, and probably all the genders. And it was top of mind for me in my last relationship. So I'm 22 years with my husband, but I was engaged to be married to someone before that, and we were very bonded at the hip and very close, but we had a lot of communication challenges, and I would get so frustrated, like I wasn't being heard. We were missing each other. There were these power struggles where someone had to be right, someone had to be wrong, and I felt like it was exasperating, going around and around and I knew it had to be easier. And so after I left that relationship, I went on to study communication quite a bit. So I was like, I'm going to figure this out, and I'm not going to get into one of these again. So I studied a lot of various types of communication skills, different, organizations that were teaching that. So
I really appreciate your naming the things that were difficult in that particular relationship. And I'm wondering if you can say anything more about what may be obvious for some women. It's like, what do you mean you don't know what, difficult communication is, Janet? But I'd be really curious to hear you say a little bit more about how do I know that I'm having difficulty in communication and not just in a bad relationship, or like, how do I target communication?
I'd say that I love that question, because it's not always that simple, and we'll get into that a little bit more today in our conversation. But communication challenges are influenced by the lenses we're wearing, the history we've had. So it's not just that simple. But my experience was that Oh gosh, when someone starts talking about, well, that's not what I said, well, that's what you did, and when they start bringing up the history and trying to make that the truth, and people can't agree on history because people have failing memory, no one remembers things the same, and so you start going around on, well, that's not what I meant, well, that's not what you did, blah, blah, blah. It's that's one thing that you could call it power struggle. I call it power struggle and a communication issue. And then just, yeah, well, I think we're going to get into some of that in some of the other questions we have here for
Okay.
today. But
Okay. Okay.
yeah, just, the main thing is people don't feel heard and understood. And that's what I hear from my clients all the time. He doesn't hear me. He's not, either it's really hearing, not listening type of thing, or not getting one another, and how frustrating that could be, where that's not what I said, that's not what I meant, and misinterpretations. So those I would call pretty straightforward communication issues.
It's interesting because I feel like, well, I'm looking forward because I'm going to ask you a couple. I do have a couple questions to ask you, but many questions. Yeah, but hearing you say that, I feel like it's interesting. What we do here in this process is we really connect to ourselves first so that we can then be in the relationships. And some of what you're describing, it's really a beautiful extension, I think, of what happens when we try to like do that. Can I actually pay attention to what's going on in here? So then I can maybe show up and do that with someone else,
Yeah.
Which is where I'm like glad. So thank you for being the expert, because I had a lot, I know, like I had a 30-year marriage and I love him still, but it was definitely not meant to be for life. And I've been working on trying to find that, perfect relationship to make it last. So tell me what I have to look forward to. What,
Yeah.
what does healthy communication in a committed, satisfying relationship look like?
Yeah. Love it.
Give me the dream.
Yeah, what you have to look forward to is feeling heard and understood. So, and what happens when you get that? So like, so you when someone's getting you, you're like, your nervous system settles. You feel like, okay, you're with me, you're following me. There's this feeling of like, we're together in this now. I'm not like fighting you to get heard or to get understood, So there's an ease, a relaxation, a feeling like we're on the same team, more feeling of connection, closeness, support. Somebody's cares enough to pay attention, to listen, to to be with you as you're sharing. So that's what's possible. It's some of what's possible.
Sounds yummy. That sounds good.
And not working so hard to freaking get heard, just like okay, like someone's there, knows how to listen. Yeah.
I really want to just go ask now and so how do we get that? Like what do we do? Because even when you started to describe that, I don't know about whoever's listening, but when I think about what it's like to be fully understood and heard, my whole body just gets soft and relaxed, which of course is also super important for satisfying intimacy, sexual and physical relationships, right? Oh my God, when you feel like you can just let go because you know that you're being heard and seen. I mean, that sounds so yummy. I'm just like, how? Please tell me how.
Well,
But before, because I feel like that's like that's
get into that for sure.
yeah, I was gonna say that I feel like that gets to be the climax of this birth and power hour for 30 minutes. So okay, so let's lay the foundation. So that's what happened. That could be like the prize. That could be like, okay, that's the future, that's the possibility. And then tell me like what I need to know to make sure, like what are the pitfalls? Like what are the possibilities of what gets in the way of me getting there? Because I like to start there, right? Like, okay, what do I have to clear to get there?
Pitfalls could answer your earlier questions, like how do you know you're having a communication problem? So here they are. Here's some pitfalls. Is blame, criticism, and defensiveness. These are my top three. And I'm going to break those down for everybody. Because when those are happening, you're not connecting. You're going to have distance and frustration. So, and there's a lot of pitfalls, but these are, let's say top of mind three, like really common places we go. So blame looks like this, like you're pointing the finger, you're looking for fault, even if you're not doing this with your finger, you're doing it energetically. it's your fault. You did that. Why are you always, you shouldn't be, well, so those you statements that are making someone wrong, that's blame. And blame causes usually defensiveness. So when you get blamed, you're like, oh, I didn't do it. I don't look at me, or where you did it too, or, so there's this kind of needing to protect. And we'll talk about defensiveness in a moment more, but that's the problem with blame, is that people don't like to be blamed. And so they're going to try and work their way out of it or attack back. And then, then you're off and running, then you've escalated and you're arguing, you're going away from each other, and it doesn't feel good.
No.
So that's a main communication pitfall. And a lot of us just do that naturally because we learned it. I'm sure, I know I learned it in my household of origin. There was always, who left the lights on? Who left the food out? Looking for the source of the problem. So no one likes to be
right, the source of the problem.
Yeah, doesn't feel good when you're, made to be the problem or made to be the cause of the problem. So criticism is a similar but different. Sort of feels the same on the receiving end and on the giving end, I would say, but it hurts more. It's more personalized. Criticism attacks who you are instead of what you did. It's more like, you are an idiot, you are slob, you messed up. So it's really pointing to your character, your personality, making that a problem, demeaning somebody. And so that's why it hurts more. But the response is often similar, where you're going to get a defensive response or a counterattack or someone walking away because it hurts. And it just spirals things down. So criticism and blame are, on the toxic side of what we tend to do. And also just common traits that a lot of people, not traits, but habits that we have. We do that. We learned it from our family, or we see it on TV, or just common in the culture. Yeah.
I'm taking notes because I have a question. I have questions for you. There's number
Should I
3.
go to the third one? Okay.
Yeah.
So defensiveness, obviously we've talked about this, but I like to say that it's normal to be defensive. It's, most people are, because if you're defending your personhood, you're defending your, how people see you, not wanting to be seen in a negative light. So we defend, so we don't look bad. We defend to protect ourselves. If we feel like we're literally, not safe, we're going to defend in some way or escape. But defensiveness is, just a common response to one of these other things. So it's normal, but it's not helpful. It's not super helpful unless you really do need to defend yourself. You're not, if you do need to protect yourself, but in a situation of blame or criticism, we want to maybe explain why we did something, but generally when we're giving excuses, when we're explaining ourselves away, when we're counterattacking, those are all forms of defensiveness. Or even walking away can be like a defensive, or kind of sitting there like not listening because you're rehearsing your rebuttal. Those are types of defensiveness. And again, it's a kind of a pushing away. So I always feel like defensiveness is like a wall, like you can't hurt me, I'm gonna not let you in. And so when we do that, we're not creating connection, we're pushing away, we're creating separation. And so it doesn't help if we are wanting connection. We're going off.
These are so useful and such powerful, like, pinpoint actual behaviors that we do. And it's interesting because as I was hearing you describe the blame and the criticism, and then and the defensiveness, I was thinking just about women I know, friends, me, and I'm curious if I'm not even sure exactly how I would ask this question, but something about, are there subtle ways that we do this besides the obvious ways of, you're bad, like those of us who are very well behaved or trying to be conscious, or or like I'm not a bad partner. Or are there little ways that, like, these sort of these microaggressions that you would see, or you'd say, actually that is blame, or that is criticism, or that is defensiveness, but maybe I don't even think about it that way.
Well, when it's not out loud, so if it's to yourself, you could still be blaming somebody, I find myself doing that, or criticizing somebody
Yeah.
silently, but you're still doing it. You're still creating the distance, and you can be defending silently too. Kind of like,
Yeah.
you can have a
Or
defensive attitude. Yeah.
yeah, or silence itself is defensive,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
I'm not gonna
It's
talk
not
to you. I'm
connecting. Yeah.
shutting down.
Right.
That's so interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, okay. Well, okay. So now we've got these things that we do. There's so much I want to add, but I'm getting interest of time. I'm gonna, because I'm like, okay, so all these little tidbits I just want to keep going at. But okay, so there we've got, now I got what I'm doing that's gonna keep me from having the satisfying connection. Um, and tell me like what thing gets in the way, like of me now, like what's gonna what's keeping me in those patterns?
Yeah. Yeah. Good way to ask it. Yeah. Um, so like we touched on earlier, that, the communication stuff can be rooted in deeper,
Mm,
older issues. So if we have early trauma, which is what I specialize in, developmental and complex trauma, which is the kind of trauma that's like happens within the first 5 years of life, or chronically over time. So not just that one-time event like a car accident or a hospitalization, but abuse or neglect, or being ridiculed or teased, or having, somebody in your family's an alcoholic and they couldn't be emotionally available, or they were in prison, or they were having just weird people over, or your parents arguing all the time in front of you. There's a lot of things, right, that could happen in our early lives, or adoption, getting put into foster care. All these things are very painful for a little one who's trying to figure themselves out and be safe. And so what a child does with that is they, not consciously, but sometimes consciously later in life, decide it's my fault. It's my fault my parents are arguing. It's my fault they're getting divorced. It's my fault my mother's sick. It's my fault I have 10 siblings and nobody's giving me enough attention. So little ones internalize all that, make themselves the source of the problem, and then feel bad about themselves. So there's this shaming process. And when we are shaming ourselves, we could of course get shamed by our caregivers or other people in our lives, but we end up internalizing that shame. It's me, I'm wrong, I'm bad. And then we feel bad about ourselves. And so that affects how we show up in the world, how we show up in our relationships. If I feel not lovable, which was part of my story, my parents got divorced before I was 3. And they also went on a trip when I was 5 months old. They went away for 2 weeks, left us with the grandparents. And that's what people did. Like Dr. Spock, sure, you can wing your kid and send them off. So that was normal, but it wasn't okay. And so I had insecurities and I felt not enough. And so I brought that into my adult relationships, feeling like, okay, nobody likes me, or if you're saying that, it means you don't care. If you're doing that, it means I'm not good enough. And so then I would project all this stuff out, and then of course create that pattern once again, where people really didn't treat me right, or just various things where I didn't feel. I kept that pattern going, right? Because I was putting out my half of the pattern. So
I love that you put your finger on that and you identify that piece about what we project out in our relationships, because it really helps clarify, in this community, like we're trying to get comfortable with ourselves. Just like, let's just start actually being okay looking in the mirror. Let's like start just feeling like I'm not a horrible person, or that my body doesn't make me bad.
yeah,
And that something then can still happen, that when we're actually in the relationships, maybe old patterns we're projecting out. Like it's like we can keep clearing this, but then something happens with others. And so on that note, you got anything to help us with that? Got any tips, or like what are
totally
3
affirm
things?
that. Like,
That was
yes
the name
to
of our
that.
talk. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Give
I
us
just
3
want to say
things.
yes to, like, relationships are when the heat is on, right? It's always harder in a relationship. That's why it's easier to be a monk than to be married. You can just go to yourself, right?
Okay.
But it's a good place to start and to do the inner work for sure. But it's never the same as when you're contacting someone and you're brushing up against that old patterns that hurt. So yes, so I have some tips that can really help, and I think this will
Lay it on.
definitely apply in your world here in this.
Pay attention, everybody.
Yes, and I just want to say again, I love what you do, Janet. I think it's so valuable and enriching for people, and thank you for doing this important work for women. And it's necessary, and so sad. I feel so sad about what I went through as a woman and a girl, and growing up in LA where everyone was supposed to look amazing, and and so it's just it's so real that we suffer with this. So thank you for that, which you do, and hopefully this will add a little, maybe something different. And I imagine it may not also. Let's see. But my 3 tips for today, I want to say they're communication tips in a way, and they're also foundational tools for setting the tone, the stage, so to speak, for a healthy, connected conversation to occur. So these first 2 tips are especially about creating the context for your important conversation. Here they are. So first one.
Like I want to give you a PowerPoint, but go ahead, go.
Yeah, there's eye contact. It's so basic. We don't think of it as a communication tip, but it is, right? Because if I'm talking to you like this, or I'm like looking at my fork, or I've got my phone and I'm saying, yeah, I got you, Janet. I heard what you said. Yep, I got you. You don't feel gotten because I'm not looking at you. And it's something that I've dealt with, because I had that wound from my mother, who would be doing the crossword puzzle, and I'd be like, Mom, and she's so absorbed, she like could not hear me. But it's important. It's really important for feeling seen and heard. And what's happening now is you're nodding, and that's another thing that we do, is like, I'm following you, I'm with you, and that this really helps someone know that you're with me, you're here. And it's a really important part of communication that's often underlooked, because we are communicating through text or through email, and we're not doing it, but we don't get the full experience of like, and like we talked about before, my nervous system settles when I know you're with me. Whereas if you're looking away, or, sometimes people want to talk while they're doing something else. They're, and sometimes it's fine because it's not that important. Like, hey, don't forget the broccoli, but if it's really like, I need you to hear something that's important to me, then, that eye contact is important.
I love that. You're talking to a somatic therapist, so that sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, body stuff. So yeah, that's beautiful. That's so real and practical and helpful to remember, something to really put an anchor in.
And overlooked, too often overlooked. And I do like to say too, that some people have a hard time with eye contact. And it just is. They're looking around, they're looking down, they have to look away because it's how they feel more comfortable. And so if that's you listening, I just want you to know, don't be hard on yourself for that. Like, that probably actually comes from an early trauma. And it can get easier to make eye contact if you work on that early stuff. So
thank you.
It does come from somewhere. And and you could also help, once you realize, oh, people really want me to look at them, but I can't look at them. You could, if it's comfortable for you, say something. Hey, I want to be able to look at you, but it's hard for me. So at least they don't feel like you don't care, or you're not there.
Nice.
So just something to offer around that.
Thank you.
And number 2 is consent, which is sort of in the same ballpark in a way. And consent means you're getting like permission, you're getting a yes to the conversation. So if you want to have an important, connected, meaningful conversation, you want to make sure the other person's available for that. Physically available, emotionally, mentally, energetically available. And so that means they're physically available, means they've got the time, they're in the room or on the screen or whatever. They're not starving, they're not distracted by their, bodies or mind is elsewhere. They're emotionally able to be present, so they're not coming in with a whole bunch of anger, a whole bunch of grief. They can actually give you their emotional presence, and energetically or mentally, we could say they're not like, I got a million things on my mind, like they can't listen because they're already in the midst of some project or something. So this comes up a lot when I coach couples, that people, someone's coming home from work and the other person's like launching at them with like, we got to talk about this thing. And the person coming home is like, I need some space. Like I just had a really hard day and I just need to put my feet up and have a beer or whatever. And so it's important, if you want to be heard and understood, that you give yourself that, asking for what you, for, hey, I need a half hour with you. Can we please sit down? When's a good time? So that you get the best chance for the best experience in the communication you want to have.
I love that. So real, so practical, so on point. That's awesome. Yeah. Consent for a lot of different reasons.
Sometimes we just expect people to be available and they're not, or someone expects themselves to be available and they're
I was going to say, I mean, that's
like,
me.
I should be available to you anytime you want, but sometimes it's like, actually, I just need like a day, or
Right, exactly. I mean, that to have, I mean, I'm not even romantic relationships, to have friendships, to have someone be able to wait for my consent to say, I need your attention, or give me your attention. As someone, as a recovering codependent, or as, or a trauma survivor myself, it's like that engages a whole different muscle, when not just when I've asked for your consent, but when I've given you mine. That's
yeah. So it's important on both sides for sure.
Yeah.
So number 3, reflective listening. And I think you're doing that here, just repeating back some of what you heard, commenting on what you're taking away from it. And it really helps somebody feel like you're listening again. So sometimes people share and then somebody else will completely self-reference and go off on their own tangent about something similar but different. And then, at least for me, I feel like, did you even hear what I had to say? You're making it all about you right now. And so that's kind of a disconnect. Whereas reflective listening comes back with a little summary once in a while, not saying everything they just said all the time, but a little bit of like, oh, I think I like you just said this. Is that what I heard you say? And then, especially when you make it a question, the other person can say, actually, that's not exactly what I said. What I said was this, and they can correct it, so that there's this understanding, right? Because we want understanding, and both parties want understanding. Things always go better that way. So using that skill, a little bit of reflecting back now and again, can get you a lot more understanding.
Yes, as a former therapist or psychotherapist specifically. I mean, and as an analysand myself, and having received lots of good support, there really is nothing like that practice, right? Although, so thank you, Robyn, I have to say, listening to these very real, practical, tangible practices, part of my mind is saying, oh my God, relationships are so hard. And I'm wondering, one, what you would say to me or to someone who might be thinking, oh, it's not worth it, or I just forget it. And, or how someone might actually learn more with you if they wanted to do actually more work on their relationship. So that's a two-parter, but maybe you
Let me start with the first one. Relationships can feel like work. I personally don't want to work too hard, but what I discovered for myself was I had a lot of inner work to do. And so that made my earlier relationship, my earlier most important relationship, a challenge, because I was in my own defensiveness and blame and criticism quite a bit, insecurities and all the stuff I was carrying in, and he was in his, and we weren't doing our work. We were young, 30. So things got so much better when I did my inner work, and I did a lot of that with Patrick, my current husband. And luckily he was down for that. He loved me anyway. We had our challenges in the beginning. So what I would say is that the inner work's important, whether you're alone or with a partner. Most of us have to do at least some of that, because we get triggered, like we were saying, in relationship more than we do on our own. And the more of that work you do, the more capacity you have to flow with the challenges, to accept what you don't like, to be able to be okay with, even if you don't like everything, you learn how to have, it's okay, I can handle it. And to be able to take care of you when things aren't ideal, you know, and to also be able to come back, you know, when the relationship is hard and you're like, there's friction, you know, at least what I found with us is we're not always perfectly communicating. It's not always easy, but we come back, you know, and repair, and we use the tools that we have. And we use our, you know, and we fall back into like the love that's there to support, like, well, we're not really wanting to break up, so let's figure this out, you know. So anyway, everyone has their own journey. I can't speak to everyone easily all at once, but that piece is what I can speak to, that
Yeah.
I feel like is so important. And the more trauma we have, usually the more that we have to do, and get support, you know, get support for that, because I don't feel like you can do all that on your own, honestly. It takes, like, you know, the therapist, the coach, someone who can be in relationship with you to reflect back, to be that listening presence, to be that caring support. And we're all worth that. We're all worth that kind of support.
Thank you. So if I'm in it, then if I'm someone's listening here saying, yeah, I think I'm ready to do that work. I'm ready to explore and continue to empower my communication skills so I can have this satisfying relationship. What's a possible next?
Yes to that. I'm always happy to hear when someone's saying yes to getting support. So I offer a free communication training, and it's right around the corner. If you're listening to this live or soon after, we're starting next week, March 18th. And
Perfect.
this is a space for women, and it's online. We're going live in several times next week. It's a 4-day training. And what I do is I offer different communication skills every day, not the ones we're talking about here, but different ones. So ones that you can actually, once you get the consent and the eye contact, you know, how you can stay out of blame, out of criticism, out of defensiveness, not trigger someone else's defensiveness, how to stay out of arguments, how to really create a deeper connection in you and with somebody else through your words and your presence. 4 days plus a few bonus classes.
Okay, so that's impressive. Okay.
Yeah, we get a lot done. And it's powerful because, as you maybe have experienced here in Janet's space, you know, we're coming together. So there's learning from one another, which I love, that group environment where other people ask a question. You're like, oh, that answer really helped me. I'm glad she asked that. So you get to learn from other people's wisdom and questions. And I give a lot of time for Q&A. And so it's rich and it's life-changing. I've done this training, I don't know, it's my 10th time, I think. So a lot of people come away from just a week of time, 4 days even, of like, wow, I finally got heard by my teenager for the first time because I came up to the conversation in a different way.
Well, amen. Testify to that one.
Teenagers are challenging. So you'll get a lot of skills for, you know, for the intimate relationships, but even if you're not in one, you know, for how to communicate with your coworkers, your boss, your other loved ones in your life.
Beautiful. Thank you. That's actually super nice to know, because not everybody in this group and not everybody that I know is in a relationship or even wants to be in a relationship. Romantic. But we all are in relationships all the time, as long as we're not living like a monk or in a cave. So I appreciate that. So how do I get in touch with you? I want to know more.
You are going to put a link below, right? So
yes. Okay, good. I don't know if you wanted to say some other way or like anything else about
it. I would say just go to the link that Janet's putting under this video, and look for her emails about the training too. And so go there, and I'm at robynsmith.net if you want to learn about me, Robyn with the Y, smith.net. But Janet has the link to sign up for this training, and we'll get to know each other.
And we can just sign up and do it for free, hey?
You can do it for free. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
It is.
Wow. Okay. I mean, like, thank you. Like stepping into that growth, that like enrichment is pretty exciting. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be work. I want to say that. I know we use the word work a lot today, and I don't love that word, but you know, it's a journey, and it's a beautiful journey of growth and commitment to yourself. So first and foremost, and that's what I teach about in the training a lot, is we do this for ourselves. And, you know, we can't control the outcome over there and what they have to say, and think about it. But when we can do our very best to come to any communication and any relationship doing our part, that's all we can do. And we
Thank you.
do it, for the love, for the juice, for the
Yeah.
because we care, about being our best selves.
Yeah, because relationships are yummy. I mean, those of us who are in this particular group right now, it's like they're yummy. It doesn't, and they don't have to be sexual or romantic. We're very clear in here, right? It's like intimacy, connection. It's like, oh, it's so good. And so
Yeah,
that it's going to make it better and more available. It sounds yummy. It sounds
yeah,
fantastic.
yeah.
So
We all
thank you.
deserve that. Absolutely.
Yes, and I just want to check. Okay, there's no questions because I see someone in the live. And so here. So hi, hello, who I know who you are. And is there anything else that you would like to say, Robyn, before we close? Anything at all to the women listening,
Hmm.
um, to the
Yeah.
world?
The main thing I like to say is be gentle and kind to yourself as you're going through your growth journey, because it's not always easy. It's not always comfortable sometimes, or we feel like we're failing at it because we're not getting it. So give yourself a break for, being a beginner sometimes, learning as you go. We're all doing that. We're all figuring it out as we go. And as you're learning skills from me or from Janet, like the communication skills, you may not get it the first time. It's trial and error, right? So cut yourself some slack for not getting it perfectly all the time. That's so important. I'm sure Janet talks about that already.
No, I'm taking that in for me. I'm like, oh, that's right. You don't have to get it perfect all the time. So
Yep,
thank you. And
you're allowed
thank
to
you,
be
Robyn.
a learner.
So the link will be below to sign up. What is it called? What is the event?
It's called the Rock Your Relationship Communication Training.
Cool.
Yeah,
The
rock
Rock Your
the relationship.
Relationship
That's right.
Communication Training, which is not all work, it's fun. And
Yeah.
I'm so glad. Thank you for being the inaugural Empower Hour for 30 minutes, which we've gone over a little bit, but not too bad. So I look forward to seeing all of you here and hearing about the challenge or about this event. And let's keep bringing more love, more joy, more juice into our lives in every way that we can possibly nurture and nourish ourselves. And I am thrilled that this is one way that we can do that. So thank you, Robyn.
Yeah.
And
Thanks for having me.
and I'm gonna figure out now because I want to just say goodbye to you. If I can figure out how to end my live